Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Windy City Politics and History channel. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the 2024 United States presidential election and a potential scenario, the most likely scenario. President Biden announced his campaign for re-election about a week and a half ago. Donald Trump has been in the race for the Republican nomination since November and is currently the front runner, polling at over 50% in most states' primaries. And so, assuming that we have the rematch of 2020, which looks like the most likely scenario here, how would it play out? And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. So, without any further explanations, before we get into it, let's just get right into it. As always, thank you for watching my videos. And let's get right into the safe Democratic states: California, Hawaii, the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., Oregon, and Washington. In 2012, they were likely. In 2016, Oregon was likely. Washington was safe. In 2020, both were safe. And in 2024, both would be safe as well. Illinois, safe Democrat. Maine's 1st District. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Colorado. And Colorado is the only one that I really want to talk about here. And Colorado was won by Hillary Clinton by 4.9 points in 2016. In 2020, Joe Biden won Colorado by 13. So moving into 2024, especially considering the results of the 2022 election, where Senator Michael Bennet won by almost 15 and Governor Jared Polis won by 19, I think you could see Colorado definitely being a safe Democratic state in 2024, especially with a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And now moving on to the safe Republican states, and these are going to be Idaho, Montana, Utah, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, even though I filled those states in opposite order. Nebraska's at-large electoral votes: Nebraska's 1st District, Nebraska's 3rd District. Kansas, it was 14.6 percentage points in 2020. It'll probably be around the same in 2024, but I'm just going to throw it in the safe category just because it won't be competitive. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi will be the safe Republican states in 2024. And now moving on to the likely states, which are not really going to be competitive. And for the Democrats, that would be Maine's at-large electoral votes. 2 electoral votes from Maine's at-large electoral votes. The way Maine allocates its electoral votes are based on district, and then with 2 at-large electoral votes, which represent the senators. So that would be likely Democratic, as well as New Mexico and Minnesota and Virginia. And now moving on to the likely Republican states, which will not necessarily be competitive, and those are South Carolina and Alaska. And now we are currently sitting at 125 electoral votes for Donald Trump and 221 electoral votes for Joe Biden. And now we are going to be taking a look at the polling and getting more into the minute details of how this could play out. But there is no polling for Nebraska's 2nd District. I believe that will be likely Democratic again. And then moving on to Texas, I believe Texas will be won by Donald Trump by a low likely margin, by around 5 points, just around 5 points, either a high lean margin or low likely margin. I'd say a low likely margin, especially considering that Governor Greg Abbott won his re-election bid by around 10 points in 2022. And then Maine's 2nd Congressional District, I feel that will be the same way. Low likely margin, probably around 6 points. Donald Trump carried this by around 7 points in 2020. And so we're sitting at 150 remaining electoral votes that are going to be highly competitive in 2024. And let's get into the polling. And taking a look at the latest polls. And starting off, we're going to start off with the state of New Hampshire. And looking at any matchup versus Biden and Trump, you have Biden +4, Biden +1, that's in January. And, these are close margins, but then I want to take a look at how the state has shifted as well. And from 2016 to 2020, it shifted 7 points in favor of Joe Biden, with Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, losing a point of support. Jo Jorgensen, the Libertarian nominee, losing 2.5 points. And Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, obviously performing 5 points better than Hillary Clinton, with an overall 7-point margin of victory difference. And because of that, I think New Hampshire would be likely Democratic. And now the next two I want to talk about are Ohio and Florida. So moving on to Ohio and Florida, let's talk about Florida first. So Florida, Trump is leading in all of these polls, and obviously looking at the election results from Florida in 2022, that state has definitely shifted to the right, and especially even when you look from 2016 to 2020, Florida is the state that shifted the most towards Trump. I mean, other than Hawaii and Utah, but that was because of third-party candidates. You look at Florida, and that's the state that's shifted the most towards Trump when you look at just the major party candidates being on the ballot. So I think Florida, I don't think it will be a margin of victory similar to what Ron DeSantis had in 2022 or what Marco Rubio had in 2022. But I believe rather than 3 points, it's going to be 4 points, close to 5 points. I still believe because of a presidential election year, it's going to be a high lean margin versus a low likely margin. But it's definitely going to be less competitive than it used to be, and I don't think that you will see the Democratic Party contest the state of Florida as much as they have in past elections. And now moving on to Ohio and Iowa, and these are two states that I do want to talk about. I'm going to start with Ohio. And looking at Ohio and Iowa, and the similarities between these two states are that Obama carried them in 2008 and 2012 by rather comfortable margins, although Ohio was closer in 2012. And then in 2016, Donald Trump flipped both of these states, and Joe Biden only made minimal improvements on Hillary Clinton's margins in 2020. So then looking at Ohio, and Trump is leading Biden in every single poll here by large margins, and I believe Biden could close that gap, especially since this is back from November. But then you also look at how the state shifted in between 2016 and 2020, and it shifted very minimally to the left, and in fact Trump flipped 2 counties, including I believe it's Trumbull County. It's not Trumbull County. It's Mahoning County, the home of Youngstown, which was formerly a Democratic stronghold, and Donald Trump flipped that county, and the state shifted very minimally towards Joe Biden. So I don't think it's going to be safe Republican. I think there's still enough Democratic support in Ohio, and I think Joe Biden can close that gap definitely within the year and a half before the election, but I still believe that Ohio is going to be likely Republican. And similar to Florida, I don't think you're going to see the Democratic Party contest Ohio as much as they have in past elections. And now moving on to Iowa. And looking at Iowa, and it's similar to Ohio in the fact that it voted for President Obama twice, 2008, 2020, and Iowa used to be a bellwether state, much like Ohio was, but those two states have definitely shifted to the right. And taking a look at Iowa, taking a look at the polling, Donald Trump, once again, leading Biden in every single poll. So I think Iowa is kind of going the way of Ohio in the fact that we're not going to see the Democrats contest it as much as they have in past elections. I think you're going to see the Democratic Party put more resources into winning Arizona, winning Georgia, winning North Carolina, and winning Nevada, as well as holding the 3 states in the upper Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, rather than trying to win back Iowa and Ohio. And Iowa only shifted a point to the left in 2020, so not that significant. Donald Trump still won Iowa by around 8 to 9 points in 2020. So I feel comfortable putting Iowa as a likely Republican state in 2020. And now we are on to the final 7 states for a combined 93 electoral votes. Donald Trump currently sitting at 219 electoral votes. Joe Biden currently sitting at 226 electoral votes. And first, I do want to talk about the 3 states in the upper Rust Belt. Starting with the state of Michigan. And Michigan's an interesting state because it voted for Barack Obama by 9 points in 2012. In 2016, it voted for Trump by under a point. And then in 2020, Joe Biden managed to flip the state back into the Democratic column, winning by around 2 points. However, following 2020 and going into 2022, you saw incumbent governor, a Democrat, Gretchen Whitmer, win by almost 10 points against her Republican opponent. And you saw the state GOP kind of go into disarray with an election denier being elected as chair of the state GOP, and now the Michigan GOP is definitely in disarray, so that's going to be favorable to the Democrats in 2024. And you look, and Biden's leading by 3 in a poll against Trump conducted from April 17th to 19th. He's leading by 4, leading by 7. So then you look at the shift from 2016 to 2020, it shifted 3 points to the left. But given everything that's happened with the political climate in Michigan, especially with that Michigan GOP being in disarray, losing donors, losing support, I would say that Michigan would be in the low likely column for the Democratic Party in 2024. I think Joe Biden will win in Michigan by around 5 points. I'd say 5.1, 5.2, somewhere in that ballpark, especially with everything going on with the Michigan Republican Party. And now moving on to Pennsylvania. And looking at Pennsylvania, and looking at the polling data there, that was the second closest state in the upper Rust Belt. Joe Biden only won by around a point in 2020. And now looking at the polling, obviously Ron DeSantis is leading Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is leading Donald Trump in essentially every poll conducted in 2023. The two from 2022, they were tied, but now Joe Biden is leading in every single poll conducted other than the one from November 2nd through 6th of 2022. And he's leading by 7, leading by 1, leading by 4. And then you look at the shift from 2016 to 2020, shifted 2 points to the left, with Biden gaining support and Trump also gaining support, mainly the third-party candidates losing support. And a lot of people say that the reason why Hillary Clinton lost these states in 2016 is because of Democrats voting for third-party candidates rather than the Democratic candidate. And then you look at 2024, and there's no major third-party candidates as of yet. So I definitely feel comfortable putting Pennsylvania in the leans Democratic column. So right now, Joe Biden is at 260 electoral votes, and Donald Trump is at 219 electoral votes. And now moving on to Wisconsin. And Wisconsin was the closest state in the upper Rust Belt in 2020. Joe Biden only won there by around 0.6 of a point. And now moving on to 2024, looking at the polling, Biden plus 3, Biden plus 1, Biden plus 1, and Biden plus 4. And then looking at the shift from 2016 to 2020, Biden plus 1.4, with Biden gaining 3 points of support, the third party candidates losing around 2.5 points of support, and Trump gaining about 1.5 points of support. And now moving on to 2024, with that shift and the polling data, I feel comfortable putting Wisconsin in the low lean column for the Democratic Party. I think Joe Biden will win in Wisconsin by around a point. I'd say 1.1, 1.2. It will be close, it will be competitive, but I'd say it's still definitely favoring Biden. And now moving on to Nevada. And with winning Wisconsin, Joe Biden has won the election. He's sitting at 270 electoral votes as of right now, with 4 states left that have a combined 49 electoral votes. And now moving on to Nevada. And Nevada was a state that I thought could go Republican in 2024. And if you look, polling data was definitely showing that. Trump has led in 3 polls, and the polls tend to underestimate Trump for whatever reason. In 2016 and 2020, he outperformed polling expectations. However, in 2022, the polling kind of went back to normal and was consistent with the election results. And then you look at polls conducted in April, and you see 2 that have Biden leading by 1. One's with him against DeSantis, one's with him against Trump. The one we care about is the one with him against Trump, because that is the probable matchup. And Biden plus 1 conducted from April 17th to 20th, and then from April 18th to 26th, Biden plus 8. And Nevada is an interesting state because in 2022, it voted for a Democratic senator by under a point, incumbent Senator Catherine Cortez Masto winning re-election. And then it also voted for a Republican governor by 1.5 points. So you see a lot of split ticket voting in Nevada, and you see that it could be very candidate specific in 2024, which is why I want to focus on the shift from 2020 to 2000, or from 2016 to 2020. And that shift was very minor in favor of the Republican Party. And I believe with the polls showing that Biden's leading, however, there were polls that showed that Trump was leading. I think Nevada will be won by Joe Biden in 2024, but I do think it will shift a little bit to the right. So I would put Nevada in the tilt Democratic column for the time being. I believe Biden will win the state of Nevada, but I also believe with some of the polling inaccuracies we've seen in presidential elections, either due to people not wanting to say who they support or just skewed sample sizes, I think Nevada will be a tilt Democratic state rather than a lean Democratic state as it was in 2020. And then moving on to Arizona. Looking at Arizona, and Joe Biden won here by under 1 point in 2020 after Trump won by 3 points in 2016. So a definite shift to the left in Arizona. And then when you look at 2022, Arizona voted for both a Democratic governor and a Democratic senator. And Senator Mark Kelly, the Democrat, won his election by almost 5 points in Arizona in 2022. And you look, and most of the polling shows Biden leading by 2 points, by 1 point. However, there is polling that shows Trump leading, one up by 3 and one up by 11. However, that is a more Republican-leaning poll. So looking at the shift from 2016 to 2020 as well, and Biden gaining 4 points of support with Trump only gaining around half a point of support, I feel comfortable putting Arizona in the lean Democratic column. I believe Arizona will vote similar to how Wisconsin does in 2024. I believe Biden will win Arizona by around 1.1, 1.2 points. I believe it will be highly competitive, but I believe he will win in Arizona, especially given how Arizona voters have shown that they will not vote for a Trump-like candidate, with Kari Lake losing the governorship in 2022, Blake Masters losing his Senate race, and the Trump-endorsed candidates for Secretary of State and Attorney General both losing to the Democratic candidates in 2022. I believe that Arizona is definitely a lean Democratic state for 2024. And then now moving on to the last two states, Georgia and North Carolina, 16 electoral votes each, combined 32 electoral votes, starting off with the state of Georgia. And looking at Georgia, the polling showing initially in November, Trump leading Biden, and then later in November, Biden leading Trump, then Biden leading Trump. And then looking at the shift from 2016 to 2020, shifting 5 points in the Democrats' favor, with Biden gaining 4 points of support and Trump losing a point of support. Georgia definitely shifted to the left, and I would say that Georgia is still going to be a tilt Democratic state in 2024 at the presidential election level. I think it will be extremely competitive, but I think Biden will still win here in Georgia in 2024. He won by under 1 point in 2020. Then Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock won election to a full term in 2022 by around 2 points against Trump-endorsed Republican Herschel Walker. So I believe that Georgia is definitely trending in the Democrats' direction, but I still believe at the presidential level, it's going to be won by President Biden by under 1 point in 2024, similar to how it was won by him by under 1 point in 2020. And then lastly, moving on to North Carolina. And this state was won by Donald Trump by around 1.5 points in 2020. And going into 2024, taking a look at this polling data, Biden is leading in every poll except for 2. In 1, they're tied, and then in 1, Trump is leading by 11. However, a ton of these polls conducted recently at the end of March, one of which shows Biden leading Trump by 2 points, is conducted by a Republican-leaning pollster. So you would expect that to skew a little bit more Republican because it's sponsored by a Republican organization. And also Signal was one of the most successful and consistent pollsters in 2022. When I looked back at the results, Signal was very similar to how the actual results were. So with that showing Biden up by 2, but also accounting for any polling inaccuracies, as well as accounting for the shift from 2016 to 2020 with North Carolina shifting to the left and Biden gaining 2 points of support, especially in the suburbs in North Carolina. And then looking at the map, I feel comfortable categorizing North Carolina as a tilt Democratic state in 2024. I believe Joe Biden will win here by under a point. I believe this will be the closest state in 2024. And I believe this will be probably the most competitive state along with Georgia in 2024. But I do believe that Biden will come out on top in the state of North Carolina in 2024, winning its 16 electoral votes, especially considering its shift to the left in recent years, as well as the fact that the current congressional delegation in North Carolina is split evenly between the Democrats and Republicans, and the fact that Biden is leading in polling data, including in Republican-sponsored polls. And now to categorize each state is just the solid color to give you an idea of what the electoral map is going to look like. And Joe Biden would defeat Donald Trump and win re-election to a second term by 100 electoral votes, winning 319 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 219 electoral votes, flipping the state of North Carolina, and both Donald Trump and Joe Biden would hold all other states with the exception of North Carolina. That would be the only flip, with Joe Biden flipping the state of North Carolina from the Republican column to the Democratic column. Thank you for watching today's video. Remember, these are unbiased election predictions based on polling. I want you to be able to watch one of my videos, and instead of having to sift through all the polling data and articles yourself, you can just come watch one of these videos where I summarize it all and make an election prediction based on all of that polling data. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please remember to comment down below, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel, and I hope you all have a great day.